Hello everyone, my name is Daman Dokra and I am from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. The title of my article is How Can Linked Open Data Ontologies Be Customized for Digitally Archiving Cultural Roots? So starting with the aim and methodology, the aim of my article is to develop an integrated approach that can be enabled to customize ontologies for digitally archiving cultural roots and historic roots. So the methodology adopted is first understanding the concept of cultural roots, then analyzing the best practices for digitizing cultural heritage, and then analyzing the existing cultural heritage ontologies. So these analysis will be incorporated to develop a framework for customizing ontologies for digitally archiving cultural roots. Then coming on to the slide defining cultural roots. For the context of cultural root, four definitions were given in a timeline shown here. The concept was first discussed in 1994 and the final definition came out in 2008 under the ICOMOS Charter on Cultural Roots. So talking about the definitions, the first 1994 definition talked about a heritage root that is composed of tangible elements of which the cultural significance comes from exchanges and a multi-dimensional dialogue across countries or regions. And this cultural heritage route illustrates the interaction of movement along the route in space and time. Then the second definition talked about a set of values. Cultural root is a set of values whose whole is greater than the sum of its parts and through which it gains its meanings. So these set of values defines its meaning. And it also talks about how root being dynamic channels of exchange that go beyond just physical paths. So here they introduce the intangible associations of cultural roots. Then the 2003 definition talks about the cross-fertilization of the cultures, taking in consideration the tangible and intangible part. Then coming on to the 2000 ICOMOS chart on cultural roots. So this definition is divided into three parts. So first part talks about any route of communication that is physically delimited to land, water, or some other type, and is characterized by having its own specific dynamic and historic functionality to serve a specific and well-determined purpose. So this part of the definition constructs the space dimension of the cultural root. Then the second part is time. So it talks about cultural root must arise from and reflects interactive movement of people as well as multi-dimensional continuous and reciprocal exchange of goods, ideas, knowledge and values, which can happen between people, countries, regions or continents over significant periods of time. So this part of the definition represents the time aspect of the cultural root. Then the third part talks about the cross-fertilization of affected cultures in these two dimensions, that is space and time, and reflects it in the tangible and intangible heritage. So when we combine all this, it gives us that it is an integrated dynamic system that makes it a part of a bigger system that is constantly evolving and adapting. Defining the features of cultural roots, so they can be basically defined into six different categories that are natural environment, territorial scope, polar function, and cultural scope, structural configuration, and duration and time. So these six categories uh, as a whole constructs cultural root as a concept. Cultural roots. So then coming on to the tools for digitizing cultural roots, so I'll be talking about two different archiving initiatives for the field of cultural heritage. So the first is Dive into Heritage, launched in September 2023 by UNESCO. So it is an innovative online platform that leverages digital technologies to safeguard and promote World Heritage sites and its related intangible heritage that transmit it to future generations. So it has four objectives. The final objective talks about tailor-made standards for platforms to meet the unique requirements of the data and make it interoperable among various domains of data systems. Then Arches, it is an open source software platform freely available for cultural heritage organizations to independently deploy to help them manage their cultural heritage data. So it is a web-based enterprise level information management platform that uses standard-based and is customizable, open source and community driven. So this follows the SIDOC CRM, which is the most widely used ontology for cultural heritage, which we'll use further for our development of the framework. Then coming on to the ontologies, in data science, an ontology acts like a structured blueprint for organizing information. So an ontology has three parts: classes, definition of classes, and properties for connecting these classes. So here are four broad categories to classify ontologies to in computer science domain. So ranging from generalized to perform specific tasks. For example, EDM, which falls under the domain ontology. For example, the EDM focuses within the geographic extent of Europe, so it falls under the domain ontology. Then going on to the so arches, which we talked earlier, is built on two key standards, which are core data standards and conceptual reference models. So core data standards developed by international collaboration. CDS defines the data fields needed for recording archaeological and architectural heritage. It ensures consistency and allows data exchange across different domains. Then the second is the ontology, which is conceptual reference model developed by CDOC. So this provides a framework for describing cultural heritage information and the relationships between them. So it defines entities, that is data fields, and their relationships, offering a common structure for managing inventories. So defining distinct features of cultural roots, here we have identified features of cultural roots that are not covered under the existing ontologies like CDOC CRM. So the first is network structure. So CDOC CRM primarily focuses on single entities and the relationships, but cultural roots, however, are complex networks of interconnected places. And then the second point is thematic focus. So CDOC CRM does not have a built-in way to capture the theme that defines a cultural route, can be pilgrimage, trade route, etc. And the third is territorial and temporal scope. So while CDOC CRM offers some relevant classes like place, time spent, process, it may not fully capture the specific territorial and temporal scope of the culture route. Then the final one is intangible heritage. CDOC CRM focuses on primarily on tangible cultural heritage objects, but cultural roots also possess intangible aspects like rituals, traditions, and knowledge. So these aspects needs to be incorporated in the ontology for when we are developing an ontology for cultural roots, specifically for culture. So coming on to the framework for customization of cultural heritage ontologies. So the approach for framework is divided into three parts. Firstly, consists of taking foundational classes from CDOC CRM, then introducing new classes and properties. These properties will help in establishing connections between the new and the older classes. So this framework addresses the unique characteristics of cultural root by leveraging existing CDOC CRM ontology. It focuses on four key concepts. The first one being the network structure. So here's the introduction of new properties such as has root section, which links the cultural root class to individual sections along the route. Then the property is introduced, which is part of cultural root. So this connects the individual sections back to the overall cultural root. Then the second is thematic scope. So under these new properties are introduced, that is has theme. So that this property links the cultural root class to a concept describing its overachieving theme. So this concept could be another class within the ontology or reference to an existing vocabulary. So to represent the territorial and temporal scope of the cultural root, new properties were introduced to leverage existing ones. So territorial scope, which is a property was introduced to describe the geographic scope of the route. This can be linked to existing CDOC CRM classes like E53 place or defined within the existing ontology. Then the temporal scope, which is a class was introduced, describe the historical period associated with the route's existence and use. Then these can use the existing properties. Then coming on to the last part, which is intangible associations, most important part of culture root. So in this a class intangible heritage, which is a subclass of E73, the information object of CDOC CRM, which we taken up as a foundational class property from existing ontology. Then another property has intangible heritage that will link the cultural root class to the intangible heritage class, establishing the connection. And the second property which was introduced is transmission method that describes how intangible knowledge or practice are transmitted along the route, can be oral traditions or etc. The last property is cultural significance that captures the cultural significance of the intangible elements associated with the route. So this framework provides a foundation for customizing SIDOC CRM or initiating a conversation on how to customize existing ontologies for digitally archiving cultural roots. It addresses the limitations of using SIDOC CRM and alone, and offers a more holistic approach that captures both the tangible and intangible aspects of the culture. So coming on to the conclusion, so it basically it talks about the advantages of the approach. So the first is comprehensive representation and interoperability. This approach ensures a richer and more complete picture of the culture root, encompassing both their tangible and intangible dimensions. And as it uses the existing ecosystem of SEDOC CRM, it is interoperable between various domains. Then we have standardized descriptions and advanced analysis, so we can use the web ontological language to deploy advanced querying and analysis of cultural data. Then the last part is beyond the framework, what we can do to make this ontology more refined. So we can utilize existing vocabularies that are related to cultural heritage, as it will promote consistency across different projects. Then documenting mapping decisions, and then formalization and scientific basis, and then the most important part, community involvement. Then engaging with the cultural heritage experts like archaeologists, historians, root specialists is a crucial for ensuring the ontology's relevance and accuracy. So that's it from my side, and here are the references of my presentation, and thank you.